Once upon a time, in the land of ancient Igbo ancestors, when the earth still answered the footsteps of men and the spirits listened closely to human affairs, there existed a village called Umunke. The village rested between thick forests and rolling farmlands, surrounded by tall trees whose roots drank deeply from the soil and whose branches stretched toward the sky like silent witnesses to history. In Umunke, life moved according to the rhythm of the seasons, the call of the market days, and the laws handed down by the ancestors. Every action carried meaning, and every destiny waited patiently for its appointed time. In this village was born a boy named Chike, the only son of Okorie Nnamdi and his wife, Nneka Udo. Their compound lay close to the forest, where the sounds of insects filled the night, and the wind carried whispers that only the attentive could hear. Okorie was a potter by trade, a man whose hands were rough from years of molding clay, and whose spirit was calm like still water. He was known in the village as a man who spoke little but worked faithfully. Nneka, his wife, was equally quiet, known for her strength of character and her unwavering discipline. Together, they lived a simple life, owning little beyond their tools, their integrity, and their deep respect for the gods and ancestors. Chike was born without ceremony, without celebration beyond the quiet prayers of his parents. No drums were beaten for his arrival. No goat was slaughtered to announce his birth. Yet, from his earliest days, it was clear that something about him was different. He grew quickly, his limbs strong and well-formed, his eyes sharp and observant. As a child, he was rarely involved in mischief. He preferred to watch rather than speak, to listen rather than argue. The elders noticed this and often nodded quietly when he passed, sensing depth where others saw silence. As Chike grew older, his bond with the forest deepened. Okorie began taking him along on trips to gather clay and firewood, teaching him how to move carefully, how to read the signs left by animals, and how to respect the land. Chike learned that the forest was not merely a place of danger, but a living entity that rewarded patience and punished arrogance. He learned how to track animals by broken leaves, disturbed soil, and the faintest scent in the air. He learned to wait for hours without shifting, to breathe slowly, to become part of his surroundings. By the time Chike reached manhood, the forest knew him well. He hunted alone, often venturing deeper than anyone else dared. He hunted antelope, bush pigs, and even animals spoken of only in whispers. More than once, he returned home injured, bearing scars that told stories he never shared. When asked about his hunts, he only smiled faintly and said the gods had been kind. His parents never questioned him, never pushed him to speak. They understood that his silence was part of his strength. Despite his achievements, Chike remained unnoticed by most of the village. He did not boast. He did not seek praise. His family did not announce his successes. In a land where loud voices often drew attention, Chike's quiet nature allowed him to pass unseen. Yet, destiny was watching. At the heart of Umuke stood the palace of Eze Obina Nwachukwu, a king whose reign was marked by balance and order. He was a man of great presence, his voice steady and commanding, his judgment respected by all. He upheld tradition fiercely and ensured that sacrifices were made properly, that disputes were settled fairly, and that the gods were honored. The people trusted him, and neighboring villages spoke his name with respect. Eze Obina had one child, a daughter named Adaeze Obianuju. From a young age, Adaeze showed intelligence beyond her years. She listened carefully when elders spoke and asked questions that revealed a thoughtful mind. Her beauty grew with time, but it was her calm nature and perceptive eyes that truly set her apart. She observed people closely, noticing things others overlooked. She was not easily impressed by wealth or empty confidence. One early morning, as the village still slept, Adaeze went to bathe at Miriocha stream, accompanied by her guards, Okudili and Maduka. The air was cool and mist hovered above the water. That day, by royal instruction, no man was permitted near the stream. The princess sought solitude, a moment of peace away from palace walls. At that same hour, Chike was returning from a long hunt. He had spent the night tracking an antelope deep in the forest and now carried the animal across his shoulders, his body weary but his spirit steady. Thirst drove him to the stream. Unaware of any restriction, he knelt to wash his face and drink. The sudden sound of movement startled the guards, who rushed forward, spears raised. Accusations flew and punishment was demanded. Chike did not panic. He stood slowly, bowed respectfully, and explained his situation with honesty. Adaeze watched him carefully. She saw no fear in his eyes, no attempt to deceive. She sensed sincerity and quiet strength. Against her guard's expectations, she ordered that he be released. As Chike walked away, she felt a strange warmth in her chest, a curiosity she could not explain. Days later, Eze Obina summoned the village and announced that his daughter had come of age. He declared that she would marry the bravest and strongest man in Umuke, chosen through a contest that would test strength, endurance, and courage. Excitement spread like fire. Young men prepared eagerly, dreaming of royal favor. Among them was Nnamdi Okafor, son of Chief Okafor Umadi. Nnamdi was everything society admired: tall, handsome, strong, and wealthy. His barns were full, his lands fertile, his name respected. He was used to admiration and praise and carried himself with confidence that bordered on arrogance. He believed the contest was merely a formality, that the princess was already his by right. Chike heard of the contest but showed no interest at first. He believed such matters were beyond him. Yet his parents spoke to him quietly, reminding him that destiny often hides behind humility. After much reflection, Chike agreed to participate. The day of the contest arrived and the wrestling grounds filled with people. Drums thundered, dust rose, and the elders watched closely. Unknown to most, Chike was ill that day. Fever burned through him, weakening his body. Still, he stepped forward, relying on inner strength that seemed to come from beyond himself. One by one, the young men wrestled. Nnamdi defeated his opponents easily, boasting loudly and calling out his strength. Chike struggled. He slipped, bled, and nearly fell, but each time he rose again. Quietly, steadily, he overcame his opponents. Murmurs spread through the crowd. By the end of the wrestling, only a few men remained, including Chike and Nnamdi. The king ordered the finalists to introduce themselves. Nnamdi spoke first, boasting of his lineage, wealth, and achievements. The crowd cheered, but Adaeze remained unmoved. Chike stepped forward next. He introduced himself simply, spoke respectfully, and praised the gods and the princess without bragging. Adaeze's heart stirred. Then the king announced the final challenge. The men were to hunt a full-grown leopard and return by the next market day. Fear rippled through the crowd. Leopards were dangerous, cunning, and deadly. Nnamdi, unsure of his skill, bribed the other contestants with wealth and favor. They agreed to work together. Chike, uninterested in shortcuts, went alone. For days, Chike tracked the leopard, studying its movements and habits. Hunger and exhaustion weighed on him, but he pressed on. On the third day, he found the leopard resting on a tree. As he aimed, the animal charged. Chike did not flee. Calm and focused, he released his arrow and the leopard fell. On his return, weakened and injured, Chike was ambushed by Nnamdi and the others. They beat him and stole the leopard, leaving him in the bush. They agreed that Nnamdi would claim the victory. At the palace, the crowd cheered as Nnamdi presented the leopard, but the chief priest, Dibia Ikejika, raised the sacred offer and called upon the spirits. When Chike arrived, battered but determined, and declared the truth, the spirits revealed the deception. The village gasped. Adaeze ran to Chike and embraced him openly. Nnamdi fell in disgrace. Ezeobina declared that Chike, son of Okori, would marry Princess Adaeze. The village erupted in celebration. Drums beat, songs filled the air, and sacrifices were made to honor the gods. The quiet hunter from a humble home rose to greatness, proving that true strength does not shout and that destiny always reveals itself in time.